We're heading into the final stretch of the FIA World Touring Car Championship for 2008, and we go to Asia, to Okayama in Japan. For the first time, the World Championship has visited the Japanese islands, and it's also the first international FIA race since 1995 at the Okayama circuit, formerly known as TI Aida. Then, as in '94, it was Michael Schumacher in a Benetton that won. So, for the World Touring Car Championship, it's a new track and a brand new adventure in Japan. Hello, good morning everybody, and welcome to the TI circuit, or Okayama as it is now known. Martin Haven and John Cleland ready to bring you the action from the one and only qualifying session for the 21st and 22nd races of the FIA World Touring Car Championship, and a circuit that was originally built as a millionaire's playground. The Aida circuit was never envisaged by Mr. Tanaka, the Japanese industrialist who built it, as a major international racetrack. But, of course, once you build these things, suddenly then you say, hey, why not? Let's have a Grand Prix here. Well, why not is because it's a long way from anywhere and along a lot of mountain switchback roads to get here. But it is still very much a millionaire's playground, and quite an odd sort of racetrack as well, John Cleland, compared to the sort of thing that we're used to in terms of a European racetrack, because it's sort of a self-contained holiday village as well.
Yeah, it's very much that. It's an hour and a quarter from the city of Yokohama itself, and all the teams and drivers stay in little chalets like it's a Girl Guide camp. So they're all sort of having a wee party to themselves, and they discovered that the local bar doesn't take Japanese money, it takes euros, so that they're a bit confused when they're trying to buy a beer in Japan with euros.
Powered by diesel, if you were wondering, as you undoubtedly what it said there in the Japanese script underneath TDI.
Your Japanese is improving.
At least that's what Seat have been told. I often wonder.
Could be something rude.
Well, there you go. You see, now when when you see tattoos on people and they're in Japanese or Chinese script, yeah, what does that say? Well, yeah, it says peace, and I wonder if it actually just says fried rice or something, and everybody is having a laugh at our expense. I gather that's possibly not the case with the Seat, but you can never be too sure. Here's one of our two Hondas, James Thompson of course in the other, and there's his teammate Taniguchi. The two Hondas racing in, well, for the first time in Monza. There were two cars in the team, and here and in Macau they will both have a car to drive, and obviously the focus for Taniguchi at Monza was to get himself up to speed for this track. There's Tomo's favourite engineer and the Tiny N Technology family, looking reasonably relaxed. And John, the car's gone pretty quickly here as well, the Honda.
James has been pretty quick. I mean, he was right up in free practice, and they've got a new engine that they were given at Monza, and the fact is that they're in Japan, they're in where they build the engine, so hopefully he's got a right powerful engine in that car this weekend and he could get a result. But this track is very, very hard on tyres, and it's the best lap, and then the next lap is 2 seconds slower. So these guys they've really got a one lap qualifying. You won't see them go round and round and round forever. They're going to do one lap, and I'm surprised, everybody's out there at the minute they're going to warm up.
Well, it's not exactly bright and sunny, and I'm just wondering what their weather forecasters are telling them, because as you say, yes, everybody's straight out, and I was about to say actually when you were talking about that qualifying could be over in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they'll have one flying lap, and according to the drivers, there's nothing to be had. Of course, they will probably have 3 sets of tyres, so they'll have 3 single flying laps, but it will be a bit like a Grand Prix.
I mean, it's rained here since Wednesday till last night, and the track, what happens then is that all the rubber gets washed off the track, and it takes, the more running that happens, the more the track gets rubbered up, and you hear a driver saying, well, the track's coming to me, and in fact it's just getting more rubber on it. But it's a one-line circuit, this, and you've really got to make the best of it.
Well, you can see across the track as well where the dirt has been washed across there. So there's, not only is there not going to be the normal amount of rubber and stuff down, but actually there's going to be a lot of muck around on the circuit as well. So there's a lot to deal with. And as you can see from the long shots, in fact the camera there's got a little bit of moisture on the lens. As you can see from the long shots, it's a really quite a mountainous area. In fact, when they had the Grand Prix here for 2 years, 94, 95, nobody was allowed to drive here. They were bussed in from 40, 50 miles away. They had a massive park and ride scheme to bus them, coach them up the mountain. 120,000 people in coaches up the mountainside. I mean, that's quite some logistics, but it's a very mountainous area. The track really undulates a lot, and you think of Brno and places like that. I mean, it's got a real...
Well, it's all downhill section here.
Yeah, real old European-style flavour to it.
Well, the driver's sort of saying, Andy Prio, I talked to him before that, and he reckons it's a cross between Estoril and Zandvoort in terms of the width of it, the type of track, the up and down elements of it. It's an odd track in the middle of nowhere.
There's Thiago's engineer. Just making a note of things. Thiago Monteiro, 12th in the championship and the last driver with a mathematical chance of winning.
Yeah, right then. With 60 points on the table here, that might seem strange because there's only 2 races left, but the Macau race is double points, so have a good weekend there, you could get 40 points.
Yeah, which is, as you say, I mean, it's not going to happen, no. But... yeah, I mean, if everybody else suddenly retired from motor race, then Thiago Monteiro would have a chance. Problems here for the Lada team. Now, both Jaap van Lagen, who you just saw, and Victor Shapovalov had problems in the free practice session with the bonnet flying open. So those will be new bonnet stays on it then, those little hydraulic things. Obviously, they hadn't attached them properly. And I was thinking that was probably because they spent a lot of time with their heads under the bonnet. In the last couple of race weekends, in Monza particularly, they've had all sorts of problems with the engines running on the car, and it does look as though that might be the case here as well, and that would certainly I mean, you don't often put the bonnet down and forget to do it up.
But it's odd because that engine there is the old Vauxhall engine that I ran back in 1989 in an Astra. I mean, it's older than me, and it's a great, reliable little engine, and they should just shut the bonnet, leave the damn thing alone, it'll run right.
I'm wondering here, as you say, it is extremely reliable. I'm not actually thinking it's possibly so much an engine problem as everything else that goes around it. Often you find it's not the 4 pistons going up and down that are causing the problem, it's the installation somewhere that's giving them grief.
The time that these guys are needing to set here is a low 37, and Tarquini's just done a 37.6, 37.7 there.
Now the name resolutely stuck to the top of the timesheets in free practice and in the testing session that they had on Thursday is Augusto Farfus. Every time they've been out so far, Farfus has been the quickest man. Behind him, though, there's been all sorts of different people. In testing, it was Farfus, Andy Prio, then Gabriele Tarquini. In free practice 1, it was Farfus, Jörg Müller, another BMW, and then James Thompson. In free practice 2, Farfus, then Tom Coronel in a petrol Seat, then Taddy Aoki, the Japanese driver, in an independent BMW. So there's been all sorts of going on, but what I don't think we've seen yet is whether or not the Seats can go quickly here.
See Charlie Lamb watching with great interest here. Charlie Lamb runs the Schnitzer team of Jörg Müller and Augusto Farfus, and I think this is a BMW track because right down the end of the long straight you go into a second gear hairpin, then it's second gear, third gear, second gear, third gear, second gear, and it suits, just at this section here, it suits a rear wheel drive car because it's pounding the rear tyres with the drive and commitment from the engine, but the steering is still, you're not brutalising the front tyres, whereas a front wheel drive car is doing all the work through the front tyres and through the front wheels. You're braking, you're driving, you're steering. The rear tyres are only for holding the bumper off the ground, so they don't do anything. So I think you're going to find that the BMWs are going to be, I don't know, maybe first, second and third here after qualifying.
We just saw Jörg Müller, although he did get traffic trying to get around several Seats on that lap, half a second, 0.58 slower on his second flying lap than on his first, which was the pole position lap. This is it's Augusto's bumper cam. This is the back of the circuit, a tight little section. He's just come out of Piper Corner, named after Richard Piper, and heading down into a corner named after everybody's favourite Lancastrian, that's Brian Redman, and then through the right-hander at Hobbs. And this AIDA track, a lot of the tracks named after old British racing drivers. He's just coming up to Mike Knight Corner, and then into the I have to say, delightfully named final corner, which is called Last Corner, and the first corner is officially called First Corner.
Quite imaginative, that, actually. Quite imaginative.
But the reason that it's not called Turn 1, Turn 2, Turn 3, the reason it's named after all these British drivers, I mean, okay, you've got Sterling Moss and people like that, you think, okay, well, you know, real legends of the sport, but actually, most of the corners here are named after legends of the sport who came for the first race when Tanaka-san opened the circuit. He invited lots of British historic racing drivers and their cars to come over. So David Piper, Mike Knight, David Hobbs, Brian Redman, Dickie Atwood, the downhill right-hander at the end of the straight, all named after drivers who came up, and obviously Tanaka was blown away, as you are with these old guys, by sitting in the bar yakking to them night after night.
I think I'll just call a corner after you.
Absolutely.
Good job you weren't there then.
Yeah, well, nobody else would have got a word in. Well, I have to say, although, when Hobbs is in his pomp, nobody else bothers to speak, because David Hobbs is a fund of great stories, almost beyond number. Mind you, with Redman and Piper in the room as well, you're going to have a tough job. That's going to be a long night.
Well, at the moment, the time they're looking for is a low 37. I don't think anyone's going to get into the 36s, although, as I said before, the track is rubbering up, so it is getting a little quicker. But a low 37, I think, would be a good time. Well,
Augusto Farfus at the moment, quicker than anybody has gone so far this weekend. 1 minute 37.29 as we look at Stefano D'Aste, the independent BMW driver. And Farfus was fastest in the second first free practice rather, was the fastest session, 1:37.260 in that, and he's done a 2:93, so in fact not quite as quick as anybody's gone.
Well, the only two drivers from this batch of World Touring Car drivers that have been here before was Rickard Rydell. Came here in '93 driving a Formula 3 car. And
raced Japanese F3 and GTs and everything.
When I talked to him earlier, he wasn't sure where he'd come in that race, so I suspect he hadn't come very well, because I think if he'd won it and been on the podium, he would have remembered.
Those are the ones you remember, yeah.
And the other one is Nick Larini, who drove a Formula 1 car here in 1994, but sort of quite famously only made the first corner where he ran into Ayrton Senna.
Yeah, he made the entry to the first corner, yes. Senna was second on the grid, second certainly into the first corner, and got hit from behind by Hakkinen and spun round, and unfortunately Nick Larini in the Ferrari chose to go outside and ran into Senna in the gravel
just
trap.
Gone second fastest there.
Yeah, no, you see, again, I don't think we've seen what the Seats have got, because at the moment the best Seat is Tarquini in fourth, Rydell in fifth. I don't think we've seen anything particularly from them. Ivan Muller's only 11th quickest, which is a sure indication that they've still got to get the sand out of the bags. But I would be surprised if the Chevrolet doesn't go well here, because, I mean, if you think back to similar sorts of tracks, like Brands Hatch, for instance, I would have thought was really quite a similar track. They went really well there. The Chevrolet's really good in the tight stuff. And even the hairpin corner that everybody else is taking in first gear, it's a second gear corner for them. And quite often on the tight tracks, the Chevrolet really punches above its weight. Hello, welcome back to qualifying for rounds 21 and 22 of the World Touring Car Championship. We're at the Okayama circuit in Japan, and looking here at Rob Huff, who has just gone fourth fastest in his Chevrolet. At the moment, BMW Chevrolet is the way it looks. Augusto Farfus first, Jörg Müller third, his teammate, and Alain Menu second, Rob Huff fourth. Behind them, the turbo diesel Seats, Tarquini, Rydell, Janae Monteros, 5, 6, 7, 8. Prio 9, Sergio Hernandez now top independent in 10th place ahead of Stefano D'Aste. And John, we've seen the first foray, really, I think, from all the cars on their first set of tyres. Halfway through the session now, some of them will be out on a second set, and James Thompson there on the screen going 0.7 of a second slower on that run. He's 18th at the moment. His first lap is now 2 seconds off the fastest, and that's probably not representative of where the Honda is, I think.
No, I think they've got a much stronger package. James was actually third fastest with a time that would currently have put him, I don't know, 10th, I suppose. Yeah, there we are. He's just gone up into 10th place. So I think he's quite confident. Although he did say the car, it understeers, it oversteers, it has got absolutely everything, because this track just doesn't take prisoners. It's very slippy, it's a low grip track, and it really does lend itself to a BMW rear wheel drive. And the front wheel drive guys, I think, are going to struggle certainly in qualifying. In the race, I would think the Seats, as usual, we will see them sort of pound along and blast into onto the podium again.
Well, one thing this track does have is a lot of elevation changes. You're climbing uphill up the front straight here, and you go over the top into the first corner. I mean, the last corner, when you came to that tight sequence, you saw the last two corners, you dive downhill into the first right-hander and then start climbing uphill out of the second right-hander onto the start-finish straight. And all this, you're flying off down the hill. Now, the cameras don't really show you, but it is in some places really quite steeply downhill, and I suppose the more a corner drops away from you or comes up towards you, then the harder it is for a front wheel drive car comparatively to deal with it.
Yeah, you're trying to change direction, and it's blasting downhill. You're trying to get well, there we go, that's a good example of a low grip track. Jörg Müller just pushing a wee bit too hard.
Well, even less grip out there, though.
Yeah. I mean, Farfus has just gone fastest with a 37.0. Now, that's... I would be surprised if somebody gets in the 36s, but that's a stonking time. 0.4 faster than Alain Menu in second place.
Well, he's only 400s away, Farfus, from going into the 36s, which is uncharted territory to date.
Well, the man we haven't seen anything of really so far is Ivan Müller, the championship leader, and he's currently languishing down in 16th place, 1.3 seconds off the pace. I saw him in the pits there, just with his engineer, that were making some adjustments to the car. He was gesturing, so he was clearly not happy about something. I think you'll see a blast from him in a minute or two.
Thiago Monteiro, second fastest, 0.31 away. Yes, that puts him ahead of Alain Menu, so that's a good second run from Thiago. And
that's right, he's not meant to be there, because it's really meant to be Tarquini and Müller that are up there.
Well, you know, I mean, this is slightly the problem for the support drivers, is actually you have to go out and qualify as hard as you can, because Seat have to come away with something. So if they don't get the driver's crown, they damn well better come away with the manufacturer's championship, and that means it's just as important to get Seats at the front as it is to maybe later in the race, if there's the opportunity, shuffle Ivan or Gabrielli or whoever the chosen drivers tend to be up towards the front of the queue. But you've certainly got to get some Seats in there amongst the BMWs. You can't just roll over and get beaten here.
I don't think there's any chance a Seat is not going to win the manufacturer's championship this year. That's a foregone conclusion, I reckon.
Well, unless they withdraw from the championship, it's going to be
Tarquini's second fastest now. Tarquini's running with more weight than anyone else. They continue, regardless of how much weight you throw at them, they continue to get up there.
Well, see, I'm fed up hearing about this weight, because basically after the first couple of races, all the front runners have got relatively the same amount of extra weight as everybody else, so it doesn't make an awful lot of difference. It makes a difference between somebody like Ivan Müller and an unweighted Seat, but realistically it doesn't really make much difference between any of the front runners. They've all got near to maximum capacity. Everybody's got championship points in the 50s and the 60s, plus a bit of success weight, so really it doesn't...
I mean, the top 7 cars have got the same weight, bar 5 kilos.
10 or 15 kilos difference. John, that's the difference in body mass between Ricard Rydell and Ivan Müller, probably. And it's a nonsense to go whining on about 7 or 8 kilos. You know, if you've got 300 kilos more than somebody, then all right, I'll sit down and listen to it. But from the beginning of the season, all you hear about is success weight. Yes, I know 80 kilos makes a big difference, but everybody's got the same problem.
But they are changing that next year, so the regulations, and it's so confusing that I don't think we're going to that right now. But
you know,
at least there will be a car ballast for next year, and not a success ballast in terms of drivers. There will be a success ballast in terms of manufacturers. At least then you'll see which of the Seat drivers is actually the fastest, whether it's Ivan Müller, Gabriele Tarquini, Ricard Rydell, or whoever.
Old buddy of mine here, Matthew Marsh, when I was starting out in commentary, he was also starting out in commentary in the UK. We used to bump into each other many times at circuits, and he's lived in Hong Kong now for 20 years, I guess, and is one of the most respected motoring journalists in Hong Kong. He's been sponsored by the City of Dreams, Hong Kong as well, to race here in Okayama and in Macau. First time in a World Championship event. He's done a lot of touring car racing. He's done Porsche Carrera Cup in the Far East and so on, and he's raced occasionally in Super Cup in the UK and various other places, but big step up for Matthew. So I'm mighty impressed he's got that deal together. either. So
he's in at the deep end, 23rd at the minute.
He is, absolutely, and he's in an independent BMW as well. But you know, he'll be in there swinging against the likes of Arido's Chevrolet, Taniguchi's Honda, Tadej Aoki as well. So in fact, Aoki's going really well. The top independent at the moment is Tadej Aoki in his Vika Sport BMW. He's 11th, and he's quicker than Thompson.
Yeah, but I would imagine, having said that, your man hasn't quite...
That was the curse of the commentators, wasn't it?
You shouldn't have said anything.
Matthew just gave you the big up. Yeah. You shouldn't have been listening. You should have been concentrating on what you were doing.
I mean, the highest Japanese driver at the moment is Aoki, and he's probably done 1 million miles. Good catch. If he just managed to keep his foot in that there, he might have got it. But he's the first of the Japanese drivers in 11th place just now, and you'd think he's probably done 1 million laps around this place. That's not coming out there, guys. You need a bucket and spade and a big digger.
Oh, that didn't help, unfortunately. No, it's dug itself in quite significantly down at the bottom. You're right, and Aoki, all right, he's got the experience of the track, but he hasn't got the experience of the cars, and therein lies the balance, really. This
isn't good. There's 11 minutes left in this session, and this isn't really good because that's on the last corner, and there'll be yellows out there. So these blokes, like Andy Prio's on a pretty quick lap here. Really the last thing he needs to do is come around here and see a bunch of yellows.
But you see, Bart will already have radioed through to him saying, look, you know,
he's coming into the pits.
Exactly. And you can see from the splits. Look, he was 74 thousandths off pole, and then Bart goes, there's a yellow flag out. Okay, boink, lifted off.
Yep.
A third of a second in the next sector he gave away, just slowing down. So he knew that was going. 10 minutes to go, and Andy Prio comes back into the pit lane, straight into the weighbridge.
Straight in the weighbridge, which is quite frustrating for a driver. But they have to take him in there, check that the ride height of the car, in other words, the height of the front splitter is 80 millimetres. It can't be any lower than that, or they get flicked, they lose their best time. The car's got to weigh a certain amount with the driver in, and it's frustrating because all he wants to do is get straight back out there in a new set of tyres, and they flick him on the weighbridge.
Yeah, well, it'll cost him 5 minutes, but some major adjustments going on here. Looked like they were just changing the camber or something there on Ivan Muller's car. We were just looking at Masaki Kano, incidentally, in that Engstler BMW. Another of the Japanese drivers joining in this weekend. And the man who's at the bottom of the timesheets at the moment is Melvin Chu from Singapore. Kano 28th and Melvin Chu 29th. Augusto Farfus is still fastest. And our pit lane cameraman needs to clean his lens because it keeps convincing me that it's just about to rain every time we see a shot from this camera.
So for the British viewers at the minute, Rob Huff is 6th, half a second off. 6 cars there covered by half a second. And he just needs to bat his eyelids, and all of a sudden he's on the front row of the grid.
Well, don't forget, Menu and Huff were 2nd and 4th. They're now 4th and 6th because Tarquini and Montero got quick laps in their Seats to go 2nd and 3rd before the yellow flags came out. And let's hope they get Matthew Marsh's car out. Now that looks, yes, they're dragging it the long way, not the straight way, forwards out of the gravel. But then, there you go.
I think he's parked for the afternoon.
He definitely is now.
Prio's 9th, 9/10ths adrift of the front row. And then James Thompson, again, 9/10ths adrift, and he's in 12th place. So the 3 Brits really need to move forward a wee bit at the minute.
Well, the time's not really important here, because if you are 4 seconds off pole and you start 2nd, you're still 2nd on the grid. All right, it doesn't give you a lot of hope for the race, but relatively the time's immaterial. It's where you end up. What is interesting is the only driver apart from
John Waterman. That's John Waterman. Alan Menu's engineer. He's just having a think to himself.
Chevrolet team pit wall.
He's thinking, how can I find 0.3 of a second to put Alain on the front row of the grid?
How can I find 0.7 of a second to put him clear of the field?
John Waterman was my engineer when I drove for 888, and he's a good engineer.
Still got a job.
I mean, I taught him everything he knows.
That's the work of
Which is why he's not very knowledgeable, actually.
Now, work going on here with Ivan Muller's car. I saw them working down in that left front corner, and now they've got the airbox off, so I'm not sure exactly what they're doing, but that looks like it's a fairly major setup change. Right, obviously the green flags are out again now, or the yellow flag's been removed, because Prio is heading back out for his shot at pole, or somewhere at least in the same postcode as pole. He's 9th. There is our pole sitter, Augusto Farfus, and I'm assuming that on the window It doesn't say Brazilian boy go quickly. It probably says as close to a literal translation of his name
fried rice or something like that.
Yeah, well, who can tell? And Ivan Muller's team looking just as though
I don't think they're too bothered.
Well, you see, disassembly of engine bay components is not normally something you'd be looking towards. No, what
they do, you watch under the bonnet's a big turbo, and they're in there fiddling with it at the minute to give it a bit more turbo boost.
Do you think they're taking that big washer out of it to actually give it some power?
They're taking the restrictor out of it at the minute to make it go even faster. Ivan doesn't need that. I mean, Ivan is actually the only guy. He's the guy who's scored in more rounds this year than anyone else, and that's how you win championships. This guy has won ICE championships, touring car championships all around the world. He knows what he's doing. I mean, he's dropped 2 scores all year, and most other people have dropped 5, 8, 9, 10 scores. It's just, you don't win championships like that.
I bet you didn't know he was one of the last ever men to win a Formula 2 championship.
No, you're right, I didn't.
Yeah, he won the British Formula 2 championship. He and Gareth
Was there only
Rees.
half a dozen people in it?
Sometimes not actually that many.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't it? But that, that was at basically the end of his single-seater career before he then switched over to doing touring cars in France, and from there constructed himself a very long and successful career, as you say, ice racing, 10 times a Trofeo Andros champion. And in fact, I think basically they took him to one side and said, look, please don't come back.
Yeah,
please don't.
Yeah, when you win that championship that often, they really do want someone else, and they made the rules so difficult for him that it was much easier just to go away and play at something else. But Ivan is undoubtedly one of the world's best, and could end up in 3 weeks' time world champion in the World Touring Cars if he continues his run of success and banking good points every weekend. Then I think you're looking at Ivan Muller as world champion.
And actually that will really only sort of right the wrong of Macau last year, where he should have won the championship. Now, it's not to take anything away from Andy Priaulx for being able to win the championship, because you can only play with the cards you're dealt. But Priaulx knows, just like everybody else, that a lap from the end, or 2 laps from the end of the first race, Muller was champion, and then a Tommy Halfpenny bit of car fell off, and suddenly he wasn't.
Yeah, this is Waterman again, sort of.
Mark Busfield in the background.
Mark Way as well. They've dug him up from the. They brought everyone out from Malix. Malix will be very quiet this weekend. You see the amount of understeer that car had there mid corner, which, in other words, you're having to put more lock on to get the front tyres to grip, and that's just the real problem that they're having with these front-wheel drive cars.
Actually, it looks
see
like
the camber. There's that head-on shot shows you the amount of camber they've got on that left front, and it's just to give it a little bit more turn into the corner. The trouble with running camber, in other words, the top of the tyre leans more in. It's not completely up and down. That has a tendency then to put too much pressure, too much force through the bottom of the tyre, and it can lead to tyre failure.
Yeah.
Or, in fact, wearing the tyre out, which they really don't need to do.
As we saw
either.
possibly with Rob Huff, we think, at Brands Hatch. Possibly that was using too much of the corner of the tyre by having too much camber on the car. I mean, we saw 2 out of the 3 Chevrolets pick up a puncture in that first race at Brands, and there was, I think, certainly there was the suspicion of the team that they might just have overdone the camber, and I think they backed it off for race 2 with a bit of safety.
They were a bit aggressive with the cambers there, but to be honest,
you don't win for now in this.
But you've got 3 sets of new tyres here, and you've only got 20 minutes to do this, so you're not really wearing the tyres out.
Jörg Muller looking very good, Nicola Larini looking very bad, 1.4 seconds slower than pole position at that time, and as you saw, he is in 16th place. Jörg Muller is on a pole lap at the moment, and of course he is the Schnitzer BMW teammate of Augusto Farfus, our current pole man. This is on board with Ivan Muller. So that's where you would see if you're sat in the passenger seat.
But that's not a good time from Ivan.
No. Again, car not working properly, I'm afraid. Farfus 1:37.04, and Jörg has dropped a quarter of a second somewhere in the second sector, which is the uphill back straight. And there is Jörg Muller coming out of the final corner onto the straight. Let's see if he's managed to find any of that time back. I'm thinking he probably won't have done. He may well have caught a bit of traffic, And the line, 0.22 away, enough to put him second on the grid, though, for an all-Schnitzer front row at the moment. Gabriele Tarquini still third, Thiago Monteiro fourth.
But Ivan Muller languishing down in 9th place, and to be honest, there's only 2 minutes to go in the session, so he certainly doesn't have time to come in, put new tyres on and go back out again. So what he's got is what he's got to do the job with, and it looks as though, as I said before, you get one good lap out of these tyres at this track, and after that the tyres are screwed.
Now, we were watching a bit of footage from 94, weren't we, Senna's qualifying lap, and the one comment you made, particularly apart from a couple of goodness me, that was fast, was how empty the track looks. There was almost nobody else out there, and they were very aware, 94, 95, when they raced here in Formula 1, that if you catch somebody, and we're seeing it all over the place here, there's no way past. If they're plodding slowly, that's it, you're stuffed. You can't, and that's going to be quite a story of the race. I think that there is going to be a bit of desperation setting in, because there's quite a few sections of the track where it's basically follow my leader, and to make a pass, you're going to have to be pretty forceful.
Well, that, and really it's, we'll see if this Ivan Muller time, does that improve him? Where does that put him? No, obviously it didn't help, otherwise it would have been thrown up on the screen.
He's really cruising.
No, I think in the race there's going to be lots of rubbish and so on offline, and most of the drivers are saying that really it's a one-line circuit to overtake. It's going to be a little bit tricky, and the guy in front, if he doesn't want to make it easy for you, then it's not going to happen. That's Alex Zanardi just giving your man a wee tap on the hip and shoulder there. That's a fairly typical Alex Zanardi.
Now that was Tadej Aoki,
That's Alex Zanardi's team boss, Roberto Ravaglia there.
Now then, again we come back to Japan.
Just watch what happens here when Zanardi gives him a bit of a hip and shoulder. Get out of my way. Have some of that. That's my boy.
Well, Zanardi was going to be following him through the corner until Aoki got it hopelessly wrong. Now, see, what happened there is Aoki saw in the previous corner how quickly Zanardi was coming up behind and tried to get out of the way, and basically really did a ham-fisted job.
Did a poor job of it.
Yeah. So you got two choices as the slower driver: stay on line, and then at least the guy behind has some idea of where you're going, or get right out of the way. And that was neither nor.
No, this is quite interesting. Ivan Muller currently is in 10th position and 0.6 down on the best lap.
And very interestingly, Gabriele Tarquini, who's his closest rival for the championship,
is on the second row of the grid. Exactly.
Yeah, Rob Huff 8th. And don't forget that Huffy is third in the championship.
He's third in the championship, and could, with some good points this weekend, could do well.
And of course, when we go to Macau in 3 weeks' time, it's double bubble, so it's 20 for a win in each of the two races. If you had an Alex Zanardi weekend, a first and a second, holy moly, that's not 18 points, which is a huge score in any race weekend. It's 36 points. You could come from next to nowhere in Macau, really almost out of it. I mean, this was Thompson's story last year. Thompson went into the final race, having gone into the penultimate race, the 21st race of the championship in Macau, realistically not looking like a challenger. Suddenly, when Ivan Muller was out, he was Prio's only rival for the title. And that's something that... all right, mathematically was on the cards when they went, but certainly didn't look like a realistic option. But suddenly he was the guy who'd scored enough points to get in the frame, as Andy had in race one.
But it's interesting that this stage of the season now, with 4 races to go, 2 venues, everyone starts to feel a little bit more pressure. And if Ivan Muller, who has only had 2 non-scores all year, just did the same thing as he does every single weekend, then he would bank some points. The truth of the matter is, he's dropped 2 scores all year. Tarquini's dropped 5, and the third place guy, Rob Huff, has dropped 9 scoring weekends. Yet he's still in the fight for the championship.
Yes.
So Ivan Muller just banks a few points, but from 10th place on the grid, he's in amongst some real hooligans there. He's got everybody
Don't
that's
name
ever
names.
No, he's surrounded by everyone that's ever been done for dangerous and reckless driving.
Well, there's Augusto's wife giving him the congratulations, as is everybody else in the Schnitzer team, and that's a really, really big effort, and they've really felt under the gun this year, BMW. They felt like they couldn't get a break anywhere, And if there's been a good BMW, it tends to have been Andy as well.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, no, really important for the Schnitzer team to get something out of this weekend and to capitalise on what might be the best racetrack of the season for them.
It looks certainly like a BMW track. Charlie Lamb there, the boss, just talking to Augusto, and it looks very much like a BMW track. However, I don't think you can rule out Seats at all.
It sort of doesn't, because it's a Schnitzer track and the other BMWs aren't in it. Stefano D'Aste is the next best.
I still think you'll see. I mean, Andy Priaulx in 11th place, but I still think you'll see Priaulx can turn it on in the race. He knows how to get the thing around, and I think that the BMWs will be much kinder on their tyres. And as the race progresses, okay, it's not a long race particularly. But as the race progresses, they will have good tyres come the end of the race. And Rickard Rydell was saying this morning that the Seat, he feels that their diesel Seat will be good with its tyres. Yet that's not quite what we've seen in other places. They've kind of rooted the tyres at certain tracks we've been at this year.
Hardly. Not as much as would be needed to level out the power imbalance. Anyway, let's hear from our pole man.
Augusto Favre's the third pole of the season. Here in Japan, you must be delighted.
Yeah, I would say we didn't expect. We knew that our pace was very good, but we always see in qualifying the competitors closing up. Therefore, I'm happy for Team Schnitzer. We have 2 cars in the first row. It's definitely a good thing for us. Let's try to keep the lead and try to carry on. I mean, I just have to say thanks to the guys. We started already with a very good base since yesterday. Therefore, we just had to find some fine-tuning, and that's the result.
Congratulations and good luck for tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Sebastian. And Augusto looking as happy as you would expect. And for Schnitzer as well, a 1-2. And I'm not sure when the last Schnitzer 1-2 on a grid was, but it's been a while. Tarquini and Montero 3rd and 4th. Rydell, the best of Chevrolets, in 5th. And Chevrolet driver.
Rydell still drives a Seat this year.
I see. I'm reading ahead of my mouth. And Huff in 8th place. And Ivan Muller 10th. Andy Priaulx 11th. Priaulx still with a lot of yellow and blue to get by to get up into the points. But then so too is Ivan Muller. But there will be a few. I was going to say a few easy passes. First set he'll get to will be Rydell. That won't be a giveaway because Rydell is a championship challenger, so he's got to get up to Thiago Montero to get any free position. So it's going to be very entertaining first race. Don't forget that both races and the morning warm-up will be live on Eurosport. And for European fans, morning warm-up Sunday morning, 5:45 a.m. That's 4:45 if you're in the UK. See you then. Bye for now.